for welcoming us. I grew up in Winston, so this is a wonderful homecoming to connect two cities that mean so much to me. Based in New York City, New Inc. is the first museum-led incubator at the intersection of art, design, and tech. Our year-long program, now in year 7, lucky 7, is known for its value-centric professional development program and a robust mentorship network made up of creative industry leaders in New York City and beyond. With Winston-Salem creative economy leaders, we have developed a series of talks, which we call Beta Bonfires, the first which takes place tonight. Over the next several months, we will build a virtual community together to share stories and business models. It's a peer-to-peer dialogue that galvanizes energy locally around rethinking norms, workforce development, and scale. The Beta Bonfires will inform how we co-create a 3-day pop-up camp in April 2021, focused on how creative enterprises can foster the well-being in our cities, which we hope takes place in person at the Innovation Quarters in downtown Winston-Salem. Now, that was a mouthful, and the soundbite is we hope to see you all in the spring. I'm now going to turn it over to musician, Winston-Salem powerhouse, and our moderator, Margaret Collins, the founding director of Center of Creative Economy. She's a kindred spirit, a former New Yorker, and thus the perfect person to take us on our journey tonight. Passing the baton to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, very much. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So I'm excited to be here as a partner with both Wake Forest and New Inc. In this year-long focus on creative entrepreneurship and new ideas. This is familiar territory for me. At CCE, we actually provide inception stage training to strengthen the capacity for creative businesses and grow successful enterprises. We've just completed our 5th Velocity Accelerator and helped launch 10 new companies. The mayor shared some of our history, which was wonderful. The final pitches were last week, and we received great feedback from our investors and mentors. In case you missed it, it was recorded on our Facebook Center for Creative Economy page. You can see the entire 2-minute pitches on there. We did award $50,000 in seed stage funding and numerous other awards. And the cohort was made up of entrepreneurs from all over the country, Seattle, Cleveland, Philadelphia, including Spain and France, and of course, numerous companies from here in Winston. So we are engaged in creative entrepreneurship nationally and globally. So my take after working in this field for over 10 years is that creative entrepreneurship is robust and progressive. These are some of the brightest and most empathetic and critical thinkers on the planet. They see problems in the world and develop solutions using their unique creative and artistic perspectives. Their creative lens shapes businesses, which create value, interest from consumers, and a marketplace for commerce. Today, you're going to hear from 4 talented entrepreneurs that use their creative skills to solve important problems. Hats off to Wake Forest for pulling together this year-long focus on ideas and creative entrepreneurs. Too many of these entrepreneurs toil in obscurity, underappreciated for what they really do to contribute to a stronger, more interesting, and more civil and beautiful community. But our time has come. It is now. The creative economy is a $763 billion industry in the United States and represents 4.2% of the national GDP. At the last report, it has actually grown 2.6%, which is in the overall economy, which is higher than the overall economy at 2.4%. And major media outlets are now writing about the importance of creative economy, including Fast Company, Forbes, the New York Times, Barron's, and the Financial Times. So let's get engaged with these 4 talented entrepreneurs. Our theme is rethinking norms, and we are all familiar with creatives disrupting boundaries in their fields of music, film, art, design, and interactive media such as AR and VR. But these creative entrepreneurs that you're going to hear from today have actually discovered problems or pain points in the world, and they have been compelled to tackle and use their unique skills to do so. So first up is Mirelle Phillips of Studio Elsewhere, a talented video game industry veteran that is using her amazing skills to solve a huge problem in healthcare. Mirelle?
Thank you so much, Margaret, New Inc., and the Winston-Salem community for having me. I founded Studio Elsewhere in the spring of 2019 with a mission to shift the experience of healthcare to a more imaginative, restorative, and co-creative space. I've been working with neuroscientists, medical staff, patients, and families to develop mixed reality environments that could be diagnostic and therapeutic for complex neurophysical conditions. Next. And then in the spring of 2020, New York City became the global epicenter of a deadly pandemic. The hospitals that were my workplace became sites of acute trauma, overloaded and overwhelmed. Next. They became war zones and frontline workers, an incredibly vulnerable population navigating the unknown in unprecedented psychological conditions. Next. And what I knew then, and so did many of my clients and colleagues, was that they would be at major risk for developing mental health issues and PTSD. Next. The pandemic was a sledgehammer to an already fragile ecosystem. Isolation and loneliness was already a massive societal issue with disproportionate impact on caregivers. Next. And physician burnout was already a global health crisis. And so we also understood at that time that there would be a principle, a framework already developed to use as a guide. It could be a roadmap for us as well to create environments that empowered patients and family members as well as frontline workers to have a sense of safety, to have agency, calm thinking, connectedness, and hope. Next. Now, in a parallel reality, I wasn't surprised in the midst of the surge, the Nintendo Switch had sold out and games like Breath of the Wild became a place of refuge for millions all over the world. Next. Or that so much of our population would find their own safe spaces in places like Animal Crossing that they could share with friends and loved ones. Next. Because prior to starting the studio, I spent almost a decade in video games. And I've come to understand how elements of it can be optimized for healing and resilience. Next. And so at Studio Elsewhere, we bring together immersive worlds with emerging technology and biophilic design, which is a way of bringing in the multitude of benefits of nature indoors. Next. And that may sound like disparate elements, but it's my belief that complex challenges of human health and well-being demand interdisciplinary solutions that can bring us closer to a shared humanity and not away from it. And that's where I found myself 8 months ago, working side by side with New York City hospital teams, bringing relief into disaster sites. I worked with the Mount Sinai Health System to turn underutilized spaces like this emergency triage tent. Next. Into a living refuge where frontline workers could enter and through voice activation, feel transported into a natural environment of their choice. This experience is mixed reality without headsets. Our recharge rooms inside hospitals became a huge resource for workers to find moments of restoration, connectedness, and even hope during a severely traumatic time. We saw over 35,000 visits in a few months and found that it was also a space where teams could have heartbreakingly difficult end-of-life conversations with patients' families over Zoom and be a site for community support. We were also able to develop special virtual memorials that could help nurses and doctors grieve for the patients that they lost. The data in itself tells its own story. We saw a 60% reduction in short-term stress, 100% frontline worker satisfaction. At the Mount Sinai Health System, employees voted it the #1 resource and intervention during COVID. We're excited to see these results published in an upcoming major medical journal. Now, the pandemic has accelerated and deepened our original mission. This winter, we'll launch a new environment for research, diagnosis, and therapeutic treatment for patients with severe depression, PTSD, and anxiety, where they'll have agency and creative control over their surroundings to optimize their treatment. We'll also have a chance to reimagine the pediatrics experience for children with cerebral palsy, where we'll bring gaming, immersive design, and imagination to enhance their neuro rehab. And I find imagination to be such an important element because it's the only way we can combat the horrors and trauma of experiencing severe illness. When we can imagine something to be so much more humane, beautiful, and hopeful together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirelle. That was amazing. What a beautiful solution to such a complicated and devastating problem. Having lived in New York, I watched and lived through the tragedy, and I was thinking about everyone as you were going through it, and it just seemed horrible. But I'm glad you were able to have a solution that could help so many. So I have a follow-up question to you. So you've come up with a unique and novel approach to addressing the mental and physical health crisis that we're currently facing. What has been your biggest challenge to overcome in getting the recharge rooms operational?
So I think that what we saw in the pandemic is that innovation became opened up, because innovation is something that I think hospitals all want, but the infrastructure is not always there. And so because it was an all hands on deck situation, I found something that I was just truly shocked by, was that so many people started moving red tape, would move mountains just to make sure that those who had solutions could start putting them to work. And that's something that it shouldn't take a pandemic to unlock. It's an issue that we see a lot in healthcare, whereas that there are, people like us, I know there are others who are presenting today that have novel solutions. And so really it's about having internal partnerships and collaborations in ways that administrations in hospitals and healthcare system can work together to really help open up what that infrastructure is for us to just be able to go and not be, sidelined due to bureaucratic issues over months at a time.
Oh, what a great answer. And I'd like to follow up with you on that in the next round of questioning, because be thinking about how you are connecting those partners that you need to, and maybe there might be people on the call that could potentially have some ideas for you, but definitely connecting and the fact that you're working across disciplines with creative, health, and so many different innovations. Obviously you need a lot of partners. So I totally understand that. Good job. Okay, next up we have Glenn Kontov and Idris Brewster. They are the co-founders of Movers and Shakers. Now I know you've all heard of AR and augmented reality, but this team is taking it to a whole new level. So I'm going to turn it over to Glenn and Idris.
Thank you so much for having us. And Mirelle, I'm always blown away by your work. Definitely a tough act to follow. So my name is Glenn Kontov, and I'm the founder of Movers and Shakers NYC. We use augmented reality to write Black and Brown history into American curricula and to reimagine public spaces. Next. When Idris and I were children, we, like many kids all over the country, learned about Christopher Columbus's boats, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Next. But our teachers failed to mention the Taino slaves that were at the bottom of those boats as they returned to Spain. Next. In 2020 in the United States, our collective history still tends to glorify the financial gains of genocidal white men a lot of the time, slave-owning white men a lot of the time, while the pain and the triumph of oppressed people like women, people of color, the LGBTQIA plus community, is often swept under the rug. Next. And so I was across the street from this situation here in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017. And the world knows that white supremacists that were armed with tiki torches, AK-47s, all came together to protest Charlottesville's removal of two statues of General Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. And this speaks to the tension that exists in the narratives that are embedded in problematic monuments. Next. So in New York City, we started a campaign to advocate for the removal of problematic statues. And we did different teach-ins and performance protests throughout New York City, including a slave auction performance piece to tie Columbus to the genesis of the transatlantic slave trade. I ran the New York City Marathon in Chains. Idris, myself, and many others on the team were trying to get accurate information out to the people as quickly as possible with augmented reality at the center of it. Next. So as a tool for engagement, we created an AR installation on the true story of Columbus. And the idea here was that we would take information that you find in thick books that either teachers force you to read or that most people probably aren't going to read. And we wanted to make it into something that was visually engaging that the public would want to see so they can really learn, like a switch and bait for social change, really. Next. And so despite our efforts, New York City only removed one statue. And then as a result of the emergence of the global Black Lives Matter movement, in July, they also decided to remove the statue in front of the Museum of Natural History. Next. So nationwide, there are over 5,100 statues of people. There are over 700 Confederate monuments, and only 394 are women. Next. So it's politically contentious to remove monuments, and it's expensive to erect new ones. And so we recognize an opportunity with augmented reality to erect our own narratives with or without permission. And so we're working on a catalog of women, people of color, and the LGBTQIA plus community, these heroes that you really never learned about in school. Because the other aspect is that changing textbooks is also a major battle, but at the end of the day, with AR, we can insert our narratives very quickly. Next. And so we imagine a world where down the line, people can engage with stories like the story of Toussaint Louverture, where most people don't know that the Haitian Revolution destabilized the French economy and made the pathway for the Louisiana Purchase, something that ultimately doubled this country's size by landmass. And it's stories like these that people need to know in a world where especially Black folk like myself are told that we don't matter. Next.
And so unfortunately, this problem doesn't stop with public spaces. There are problems with representation in our school systems as well. Our textbooks are centered around white narratives, teaching kids a watered down version of the true history while leaving out a lot of the racism and oppression that formed this country. And so due to the pandemic, we really wanted to take our approach to public spaces and apply it to the educational setting, really getting our technology and our culturally responsive curriculum into the classrooms with majority Black and brown students. Next. And so we actually made a pivot in the short term to make our Monuments app able to recognize surfaces wherever you are. And once you've recognized these surfaces, you'd be able to place these digital monuments right into them. So if you were in your living room, bedroom, wherever you are, you can access and experience these monuments. And so these AR experiences are anchors for the kids to learn history spatially. Next. Next. And so for the first year or so of Movers and Shakers, I was balancing a job with my work. I was working as a computer science educator at Google Code Next, an educational program that works with high schoolers of color around New York City to build the next generation of Black and Latino tech leaders. And so as a computer science educator, I experienced firsthand the value that can be gained from exposing the youth of color to these new and exciting technologies, as well as allowing them to see themselves represented in these technologies. And so while working on my AR with the job, I was able to bring the kids in on our process at Movers and Shakers. We realized the value of AR as a tool for engaging kids in the classroom. And so these findings led us to apply for and win Verizon's National 5G EdTech Challenge, where they were looking for creative applications of 5G to increase engagement in the classroom. And so we have developed an app called Unsung, which is a multiplayer augmented reality learning experience that highlights women musicians of color that use their platforms to overcome adversity and advocate for social change. This is a modular experience where kids get to collaboratively explore the lives of Odetta Holmes, Ella Shepherd, Florence Mills, and Tiny Davis, extending their learning beyond just reading and into an interactive realm. And so this right here is what we call a story box. It's a digital narrative sculpture that can be broken up into 4 different sections. And this is what the kids would see on their classroom tables through their iPads. The Storybox technology gives us a way for kids to learn about figures that they usually don't hear about in school and do so in a revolutionary and innovative way. Next. Students get to peel back the layers of time and teleport into specific scenes throughout history as if they were there in real life. And so when the kids are outside of the classroom, the way they usually intake information is extremely visual. Social media, video games, TV, etc. But when they're in the classroom, they don't have that same level of engagement. And on top of that, the content doesn't resonate with them either, specifically because there's not enough Black and brown representation in these curriculums. But using our content and our technology, students are finally able to engage with information and learn similarly to how they do in their free time with their friends. And so we take that extremely visual and interactive process and the educational historical content that the kids need to learn and blend them together. Next. Next. Oh, there is no next. Okay, so to end off, Unslung is slated to be in 5 schools in 2020, and it's already getting that process started right now, and 100 schools in 2021. So thank you for listening, and we can hope that you can just join us in the fight to make the invisible visible. Thanks for your time.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Glenn and Idris.
Thank you.
What a amazing opportunity you are providing for so many different stories to be told. So you've really entered this space at a time when the entire nation and our world is waking up to the problem of systemic racism and unjust treatment of people of color. You really are at the right place at the right time for your project and your movement. So I'd like to hear what has been your biggest challenge to overcome. How have you really tackled this in a time when there's been so much turmoil in our country, and how are you overcoming the challenges of getting this organization and this project up and running?
So I would say that there have been several challenges. One is the beginning. We were focused on boots on the ground activism in the street. And so I would say the challenge was meeting the moment and staying focused. So we were in a tech accelerator, it's called Fast Forward for Tech Nonprofits, over the summer. And they were saying, make the most important thing the most important thing. But it's hard to do when we were out of Black Lives Matter protests last year and there were 10 people that were there, and now the whole world is saying that, right? So even Mirella and ourselves did a partnership to get masks and PPE out into the streets to as many people as possible. And so the biggest challenge was slowing down and understanding that this work to finish the work of the civil rights movement is going to take a generation. And so the anchor really is in education, and it's in something that can lay in permanence for, years and years of people, of different grades of students to engage with. And so just that focus and staying aligned with our mission, at least from my perspective, was definitely a challenge in itself.
And just to add on real quickly, I think that what I see is we're facing kind of 2 really uphill battles. We're trying to get the curriculum changed and to be more representational of communities of color, which is already a lot of red tape in that line of work. But then we're trying to add a really novel and cutting edge experimental technology where a lot of people don't really see the value or use for it. And our use case and perspective on AR is very different from a lot of people who engage with the technology. And so trying to convince people that this is the right thing to do and that this can work, even though the kids all love it and the teachers love it, to convince those that we need to convince to be able to operate in these spaces has been a lot of work. It's been a lot of groundwork, a lot of convincing, but we're doing the work and we're very confident that things will open up in the future.
That's great. Well, good job, and good. That's really important that you figured out how to focus amidst all the turmoil of what was going on in our country, and that's really the way you're going to be successful, is you focus on your mission and vision and create value for the customers. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people that want to bring your project to their school or their community. It's so important and it's so novel. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to just say a mention to everyone on the call. We are going to have questions from the audience at the end of this. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And there's going to be some people looking at those questions, and they'll bring them to the panelists at the end. So don't be nervous about adding questions to the chat, because we will open it up to everyone later. Okay, next up we have Crystal Perceau, who is the founder of Grouphug Solar. And Crystal is a talented industrial designer and toy designer who has founded this amazing company. So I'm going to turn it over to Crystal Perceau.
Great, thank you. Very excited to be here. Glenn and Idris, also a very tough act to follow, I think, for everyone presenting. Hi, my name is Crystal. I'm the founder of Grouphug Solar. Next. At Grouphug Solar, we make ridiculously good-looking solar panels that are easy to use, because renewable energy shouldn't be so complicated. Our first product is a window solar charger. It's a solar panel that you can hang in any sunny window. It's designed to look beautiful like home decor, but function as a solar panel. So it actually charges a rechargeable battery where you can charge devices off of the grid. Like Margaret said, I spent the last 7 years as a toy designer. I designed STEM education toys at a company called Little Bits. I worked on some really big projects with Marvel, with Star Wars. And a question I get asked a lot is, next, how did you go, oh, sorry, one previous. How did you go from designing R2-D2s to designing solar panels? Like, why would you quit a toy design job? And I think for me, next, it really started with this like frustration. Next slide. And I've always considered myself a very sustainably minded person. I'm the person that buys reusable tote bags, reusable straws, reusable water bottles. Like, that's totally me. But when I started to dig into the research of what the drivers of climate change actually are, next, a lot of it is burning fossil fuels for electricity production. So here I am at home with my like pack of stainless steel straws, and it wasn't matching up to the type of impact that I wanted to have. Next slide. So I thought to myself, I will just go out and buy a solar panel. Like, how hard could that actually be? But when I started to do my research, the only panels I could find were for homes. And I live in Brooklyn. I don't own a house. I rent an apartment. So that didn't feel like an option for me. Next. So it seemed really unfair that like the billions of people around the world who maybe don't own a home, rent, or live in a condo, don't have access to the rooftop, just don't have an option to go solar. Next slide. There are some personal solar panels on the market for people who like camping, fishing, hiking, all of that outdoorsy stuff. That is not me. I hate doing all of that. And to me, it just felt like solar was in this niche where, next, I wanted it to feel like it came out of an anthropology catalog, like it was the prettiest, easiest thing to do. Because the reality is, if we really want to make a difference, you know, I'm sure everyone has read the statistics. We have like 10 to 15 years to do it. And we have to act now. The biggest uncovering that I came across in my research is that there's this huge gap where there's a lot of people who want to do the right thing, who want to be sustainable and want to go solar, but there's this perceived kind of obstacle that you need to own a house to do it. And part of Grouphug is closing that gap for people. And at Grouphug, we are your first step in learning about and adopting solar energy. So we really need to think the norm of thinking that solar panels only go on rooftops, because that is not accessible for everyone. Next slide. And I really believe that the future of energy needs creativity and not just utility. We think of utilities as things that you don't really think about. You plug something in and it just works, but we need to get more creative about that. This is a picture of the first commercial solar panel ever made in the 50s by Bell Labs. And when I found this, I laughed out loud to myself because I couldn't believe that the shape of solar panels hadn't changed in 50 years. Like, that's insane. And we can do a lot better than slapping rectangles on poles. So with our product, it is designed to really integrate into your home seamlessly, where you want to look at it. You're excited to charge your phone with a solar panel. It's something that you're happy about and you want to show it off and use it. Next. We do have almost 1,000 customers now where people send us photos of solar panels in their homes. And this last one always makes me so happy. Someone said, this was the easiest solar transition. Everyone starts with a small step. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Here are some pictures, just some insight into our design process. So, without going straight to the rectangles that you see on roofs, really thinking about how could solar emulate stained glass? Could we make solar panel jewelry? Could we make solar panel like decorative windows? How could we actually do that? And taking a lot from my toy design background, this is an architectural panel that we're working on, a herringbone solar panel that will hopefully be coming out next year. Next. This is probably the craziest one I've ever built. This is Solar Cat, the cutest solar panel ever made. Her name is Barbara. She also meows. It's a 140-watt cat-shaped solar panel at a museum in Queens, New York. And the best feedback we've gotten about this is sometimes people walk up to it and actually ask where the solar panel is because it looks like art and you don't even know that it's a functioning piece of tech. Here's another view of Solar Cat from the inside. Next. We've had a really busy year. We were recently on Shark Tank earlier this March. We were able to win an angel investment from Mark Cuban. So he's our first investor. And it's been really exciting to be able to show people that solar can be exciting, can be sexy. And I think we're excited to continue growing. Next. Thank you so much.
Great. Wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a cool idea. And you are right that so many of us want to figure out how to engage with solar, but we don't have the money or can't put a bunch of panels,
Totally.
don't know how to put a bunch of panels on our rooftop. So thank you. So you have a consumer product, which is very different from the other two presenters so far.
Yeah.
So you have the challenge of getting your product into the hands of consumers who want to try it. So as an entrepreneur, what are your distribution channels? What are you focused on? Is it B2C? Is it B2B? Are you going to cut straight to customers or going to businesses? And how are you what is your focus for the next year?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting year. I think, in January, we were actually focused more on B2B and more on larger distribution channels. But when COVID hit, we kind of switched and just focused on direct to customer. So really focusing on our e-commerce page. And we actually, more than anything, I actually feel like Grouphug is kind of secretly an education company where people come to us to learn about solar, learn about what their options are, and like have a tangible thing they can take home and understand. So a lot of our marketing is actually education, which is the most fun kind of marketing, I think, because it feels so authentic. And then we actually do also sell quite a few to solar businesses. So kind of fitting within a larger ecosystem where solar companies buy our product to show and convince their customers how easy solar can be. So we do sell to solar companies and we also sell direct to customers online.
So where do you think your focus needs to be? Are you trying to, going big straight to customers is tough. I know you have a website and you're selling, and for $149, we can buy one today.
Yeah.
But is that where you're going? That's also more expensive to market straight to consumers too. So
it is. Honestly, we've only been in stock for 3 months. So every single day we get more data. I think you're totally right that like marketing directly to customers, there are costs to acquire them, right? To market them, to pay for digital ads and things like that. And with larger solar companies, we're able to sell like 10 or 20 at a time. So it's a little different. I would say right now we're actually selling evenly, which is not the most useful data to make a decision, but it's something we monitor pretty closely so that, I think after 6 to 9 months, we'll know which one to lean into.
Good. When did you launch? In January? You said January?
We did kind of a staggered like launch. So last year we technically launched on Kickstarter last summer. And then we had the fun job of going through manufacturing during COVID, which I don't recommend to anyone. And then we were in stock this June.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. It's a really interesting product.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to come home to Winston-Salem and feature one of our exciting entrepreneurs here in our city, Kevin and Amen Clark, the founders of Point Motion. And I'm proud to say they were in our accelerator in 2018 and joined us from Boston at that point. And since the accelerator, they've actually moved to Winston-Salem and have chose to launch their amazing business here. So welcome, Kevin and Amen, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And, thank you everyone for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Joines, New Inc., Wake Forest. Margaret, absolutely always a pleasure to be working alongside you to continue to advocate for this kind of thought and entrepreneurship. As you said, this is all about creative entrepreneurship. And without beating over the head too much about this, boy, I'm very creative. I went to music school, studied jazz composition and film scoring, and that was kind of where I started. But Point Motion, we're all about rethinking the norm and how we bring music to people where they need it most. Next slide. So while I was studying at Berklee College of Music, the story as a brief background is that my cousin, he had a spinal injury from a motorcycle accident, which left him paralyzed from the waist down. When he was sent home with from his physical therapist after recovery, he was told to go ahead and follow exercises on a piece of paper. And that for him was just a guiding point, but it really didn't motivate him to comply with his exercises, didn't really increase his chances of improvement. And to be honest, he was a hero to me growing up. I wanted to see how could I help him, but the most I had at that time was music. And I know that listening to music isn't the same as creating it. Moving your body and experiencing sound, like when I play piano, is a healing experience. And I wanted a way to bring that to him. So I had this Xbox Connect camera sitting in my dorm room. I had one actually in bingo, and it was just sitting there. I didn't even have an Xbox. So I thought, why not connect this to my computer and make each one of these stretches on this piece of paper a different song from a playlist. With that, and seeing the impact and seeing how I could bring music into an experience where for him, he was just in a room silent by himself, and realizing actually a startling and shocking fact that actually, according to lead researchers in child development, only 1.8 million children in the US get assessed each year for their developmental needs, whereas that's only 15% of the number of children who are estimated to need those assessments. The reason for that shortage is a lack of specialists that are trained to be with people one-on-one. So I thought of all the children with impairments and cognitive and motor functions who could benefit from embodied music experiences that would transform that therapeutic or education experience. Next slide. As I was in college, I just started with simply ideation. So I wanted to create a musical tool that could quantify outcomes using motion capture technology that didn't require any handheld or wearable devices. So we filed patents, we started prototyping, and we were testing engagement through these interactive motion-based games where children can move their body, and with each movement, it creates a sound or a auditory feedback response as a result of their movement. We had many families that we were talking to. We must have talked to over 1,000 different providers, families, people who are advocates for the special needs space. We even piloted at a Boston public school and had a case study published talking about the qualitative benefits of that MVP. And from there, we were able to actually extend even further. And thanks to this, the Velocity Accelerator, which we did in Winston-Salem, we were able to really grow our business and really take this idea and bring it to the next level. And what that meant is not only having an idea that could reshape how people approach a problem, but also do it in a way that stuck to the needs and the core values. Next step. So the quadruple aim of healthcare, for those of you who don't know, here they are: improving patient experience, improving population health, reducing costs, decreasing clinician burnout and overall experiences. This is what we focused on. We didn't just take a technology and deliver it. We said, let's work from the outcome. So we actually ended up partnering with a subject matter expert, a doctor who created a curriculum, and we went ahead and piloted it within a healthcare system for children in New York, which is great because now we're doing this, this talk with people from New York, a very, forward-thinking state, absolutely. But it was a huge validator, and from their experience, now they're looking at bringing this on full time. And for us, that was just, just the starting point. And now, next slide, but we're actually delivering this across various continents. And Imen's going to tell you a bit more about how we implemented this.
Thank you, Kevin. My mission as a design thinker and a technology evangelist when I joined my partner, Kevin, on this journey was to bring the same care and empathy that he used to conceive this idea and put it in the implementation phase. We were clear about the definition of innovation, a good idea that was executed well. We rethought norms of delivering assessments. We considered inclusivity and adaptability. Those two main points were what we wanted to move towards successful human experiences. We also considered that there was no products that fits all. We created what we call an inclusive design pathway to personalize assessments per client needs. We took into consideration the individualities of clients, biological and psychological needs, and even their choice of music to increase their engagement. And we package it as you can see. The subject matter experts create enriching musical experiences with the targeted curriculum through the cloud platform. From there, the health and education institutions assign different programs to their different clients. The motion capture toolset is a markerless one. It does not require any handheld device or any markers. It uses simply the computer vision for more accessibility. It is used to engage in a music movement intervention, as Kevin was saying, as well as allowing for objective data collection during the gameplay that flows automatically in the user profiles in the cloud data platform, and that is used for assessment by specialists. Next. Delivering engaging experiences in healthcare and education, specifically as you might all have heard about the remote patient monitoring and telehealth, especially after the COVID-19 crisis, needed us to look at it from a different perspective and have a special focus on the patient-centered experiences. Actually, there are many studies that emphasize the importance of expressive arts and therapies, healing, and even public health in general. We're so glad to be in Winston-Salem, where we give special attentions to arts and innovation in that realm. So to wrap up, our mission is to design more cognitive and expressive and practical tools to empower health and education specialists to provide more meaningful human experiences, to improve overall wellness, despite the socioeconomic or even the geographical dispersity. Can we go back to the slide just before that? Because I wanted to close this, and we wanted to leave you with this one last thought. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do it. Thank you.
And you all of you on the panel definitely fit that category.
Thank you.
But particularly Kevin and Amin, but you all really are crazy enough to think you can change the world, and you're doing it. Bravo. That's what I was trying to say in my remarks at the beginning is what I've found in working with creative entrepreneurs is that they are the most brilliant critical thinkers, design thinkers, and they're just not afraid to go out and solve the problems that they experience. So bravo.
Thank you.
So now question for Kevin and Amin. what a unique business model that you've come up with. It uses your skills as musician and design thinker to solve a huge pain point for patients with issues that need to be assessed. So I'm sure our audience is wondering, how do you find your customers? What tools are you using to get the word out and connect with the right people? Because what you're offering is this amazing technology, but there's so many people that could use it, but how do you find your customers?
That is a great question. And we're happy to have figured that out. That was probably one of the harder parts of this process, especially coming from a background of music and, entrepreneurship to a level, but, navigating healthcare and education systems can have its own share of challenges. But what we realized is working from the outcomes is a different approach. So we developed this cloud platform that has this motion capture tool where doctors can literally go in and load in all these standard gold standard practices that they're doing, whether it be exercises, socio-emotional assessments, programs that they automate into our platform. They're going out into conferences, into their network, into people who they're already providing their curriculum content to, typically on pen and paper. But now using our platform, it allows them to digitally distribute that content through the cloud. And essentially, we work with them as partners to establish remote care programs for healthcare and education institutions around the world. I think they might still be here, but actually one of our customers I noticed is in the actual attending in the chat from Australia, a brilliant occupational therapy organization called QWERTY Kids, based in Australia, who we work with now to provide really a first of its kind of service to all children in Australia through their brilliant organization and curriculum. So it's really about strategic partnerships. It's about everyone being an expert at what they do, not necessarily saying we're going to do everything, right? We're good at making tool sets that create digital experiences. So we partner with the curriculum authors who can come with us into the market and deliver one cohesive package that solves a lot of problems.
Great. Wonderful. I'm glad you figured that out. You're finding your customers. That's really important. Okay, great. Now we're going to ask all the panelists, we're going to have a little conversation between all of us. I'm going to pose a question, and I have some other questions for each of you, but we can have different people answer it as well if you have a burning desire to answer that question. So what I wanted to ask with Mirel is, so what is next for your project? You have a very specific installation that you've done with the rooms in the hospitals, and how are you planning to expand your work in New York or beyond? And how will you get the collaboration you need? I know you expressed that you were truly being innovative, and that was a struggle within these very hierarchical organizations. So I love that you said innovation needs to happen despite the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, just share with us what you feel your next steps are.
Yeah. We have, it's part of our mission is to make sure that, and I actually want to quote Glenn on something he said before that I heard, is to get the tools of the future into the hands of those who get it last is something that I remember when Movers and Shakers says. I'm like, that's so powerful. And that's one of the things that I've thought about this in terms of like getting also the work out to make sure that it gets to vulnerable communities who've been really impacted. So we have a partnership with the Greater New York Hospital Association to scale our environments out to 15 of the hardest hit hospitals in New York City. They're called safety net hospitals, so they're not taking insurance and are serving the most vulnerable communities. So we're going to be doing a pilot with them. We're also going to be doing pilots with VA hospitals in New York and outside of New York as well. There's one that we're really excited to get started with in Virginia, and their first pilot population will be the hospital environmental service workers. So those are the workers who, in this case, 90% of them are military veterans. 30% of them went through a mental health rehabilitation program to have those jobs. So they've been like triple impacted by what this pandemic has been. And those are the ones who are tasked cleaning, out the hospitals every day. So they're going to have one of our environments first. And then after that, it's going to go to the food services teams, who are primarily women and primarily caregivers as well. And as I expressed in my presentation, those are ones that are really hard hit by this as well. So that's we had those in the short term that are coming out, expanding what our pilot programs are to more communities that we know we want to get this out to right away, as well as with kind of what our long-term missions are, which we're staying focused on. So in 2021, we start tackling an ICU room pilot, which I alluded to at the end of the presentation, to show what this is going to be in the patient-facing experience.
Wow, that's incredible. You've got a lot of really concrete plans. That's great. So I'm wondering if Kevin and Amin could collaborate with you on that, with the point motion and assessment with. Yeah.
I actually wanted to add this particular note about Mirel. I heard about you this year a lot. Somebody came to me and said that we had to meet this girl in New York who is revolutionizing this experience, and she's having so much traction, and that we have to collaborate. I actually just made the connection 10 minutes ago, like, to be honest. But I'm so happy that in the world of creative and entrepreneurial people, we still can find each other's like this. So absolutely, we'll be definitely interested in talking to you more.
Cool. So we can collaborate amongst the panelists. Anyone else have an idea to collaborate with Mirel on?
We need to power the whole tent with solar panels.
Yes.
Yeah,
Crystal and I have talked about the solar cats, and that we want that.
I feel like we could all make such an amazing space together. I think this is speaks to how important creative entrepreneurship and creativity when it comes to problem solving and rethinking the standard approach, how important that is. And ultimately, I think that's how we find better impact than just the standard approach.
I know, is really, I mean, working together and collaborating, that's definitely the way of the future. So Glenn and Idris, I wanted to kind of ask you a follow-up question too. You've got something really amazing and so clearly in the right space for educational institutions, as well as communities and towns and cities. Are you overwhelmed by people wanting you to bring your projects and your concepts to their city and educational institutions? And how are you planning your next moves? I know you said you had to focus, but I'm really glad that you said that, because that's the way you're going to make progress and get traction. But what are you thinking are your next steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. The focus right now is on the pilot for our app. So we're releasing it for Black History Month of 2021. And we see an opportunity to also present this to parents who are doing homeschooling. So there are a lot of kids doing remote learning, and they need stuff to do. They need to stay busy. And our curricula around the monuments can be a supplementary activity to their education. So as far as right now, we're laser focused on speaking to as many parents as possible so that we can get data to appropriately build the app. And then once we're shooting to the homeschool market, we're also going to do like a free license to charter schools to get data on how to iterate and improve on the app itself. And so we're looking to speak to specifically, especially Title I middle schools, but any sort of middle school that would be willing to speak with us to do a pilot project. That would be incredible.
Well, we have several of those in our community, don't we, Provost Kirsch? So I would think that we could probably give you some great beta testers for that. We would love to work with you on that. Please reach out to us, because I think getting the middle school and high school and even earlier, getting them involved in understanding the history that's so important that is not part of their books is really important. So Winston-Salem could be a really good collaborator with you on that.
That'd be amazing.
And many of the panelists on this call know the people for you to talk to. So I know there's some other questions from the audience, but I want to just get around to the rest of the group here. So Crystal, what have you learned from your exposure on Shark Tank? And what is it like working with Mark Cuban?
Yes. It's funny. I think for me, going on Shark Tank, it was one of those things where when the opportunity came up, like I like, of course I like wasn't really ready. Like, I don't know that you're ever like ready. And I was just like, yeah, let's do it. So it was nerve-wracking, but I think sometimes you have to just say yes to stuff and then just make yourself do it. So that's definitely how it felt. I think the exposure has been incredible. And I think going on the show, mentally I was like, even if I don't get a deal, I will have gotten to talk to primetime America about solar energy for 10 minutes, and like that's huge. So if people just watch it and learn about solar from me talking about it, I think that was such a huge accomplishment. Obviously I was so delighted when Mark wanted to work together. It is pretty shocking, but I talk to him every week, which is, I don't know how he does that. He answers emails in like an hour, like always. Which makes me feel bad because I have such a hard time clearing my inbox. And you're like, if Mark Cuban can answer an email in under an hour, you can do it. But it's been really helpful, and I really appreciate him as an investor, because I think despite all of his success, he is super grounded and gives really practical advice. So like not chasing things that aren't tied to revenue, finding your customers and things like that. So if I ever have a crazy idea, I think he actually grounds me, which is unexpected, but really useful, especially being a creative entrepreneur. I think I have a million ideas every day, and you can waste a lot of time chasing them instead of doing the work.
Yeah, great. And I guess the episode aired and you have copies of it, and you can share that with people if they want to see it. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
I'm sure you did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Did anybody else? Did they fight over you? Did they?
Actually, no. So it was I think what's actually funny too is like you're actually in the tank for like an hour, but they only like cut it to 5 minutes. So it was a really interesting conversation with all of the sharks, but the way they edited it, three of the 4 sharks did drop out before Mark made an offer. But like of course, when they cut it together, it's like very dramatic, and like they all went out at the same time, which like didn't happen in real life. But no, and I think honestly, like it's I'm hitting on this niche of like making solar in a different category that people haven't really seen it before. And I think I was excited to partner with Mark because he tends to work with founders and technology that's not as well established. I think some of the other sharks like need to see the 5x revenue within 5 years. And candidly, I don't know that's where I am right now, but I think Mark was the type of shark that is like willing to stick with it with you.
Cool. That's great. Good to hear that story. Glad that there's a human side to all that, to that program.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin and Amin, you are our hometown hero here in Winston-Salem. And how can this community support you in getting the word out about Point Motion? What do you need in order to be laser focused on getting your product to market? And I just wanted to
I think that's a great point to make. And I mean, just to quickly answer a question that I saw in the chat, just because I'm not sure how much longer we have. What we do essentially in market and farm fresh trading, just to answer really quickly, because I don't want, and I'll come right back to what we need. But there was a question: how do we measure progress when a child engages with Point Motion? We're measuring progress. It's using the built-in camera on the computer to track movements as the child engages with verbal or visual prompts on the screen, almost like Dora the Explorer or Barney. And as they engage with their movements, it's measuring their reaction time, their physical engagement. So that's how we're collecting data. So it's automatically happening in the back end based on the motion capture technology. And for a child, it means that they can just play games at home, and it's a way for a doctor to monitor their progress over time. Now, what we need is actually what we're trying to do. We're trying to find doctors and teachers who are also rethinking the norms and interested in finding a better way to deliver their practices to the world that is coming into a increasingly remote care dependent industry. So right now, I think if there's anyone out there listening, or anyone who knows, or maybe your personal doctor who you might have worked in the past through physical therapy, occupational therapy, music therapy, work with education experts. So if there's people listening who might know somebody in those fields who's interested in talking and learning about this and potentially partnering with us to make their content available on a global scale, we're absolutely interested in having those conversations. And that's how we grow, really, is through those kind of partnerships.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add one point, and I think that, again, I think that Mirel is the one who mentioned this point earlier, and that's maybe because we are trying to innovate in the healthcare space. But it is sometimes sad to realize that a pandemic is what have made us realize the importance of human-computer interactions. We all use computers, but to be able to understand that human-computer interaction could allow us to do remote patient monitoring during a pandemic times where, yes, we understand that all the children needed all that help, but during a pandemic, there was a different shift of focus on the disease than on the current wellness for those children with special needs. And using the technology that we have at Point Motion, doctors were still able to monitor that progress without having to input any data manually or having to see those children one by one. So any institution
who don't have access to a doctor, who are in low-income communities, who don't have specialists, like there's so many gaps in pockets within the US, which is where there's just not specialists to be with people in person. So how else are you going to get a small population of specialists to reach all these people? And it's through this kind. So really, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with all of you and share what we're doing. Everyone, I really hope all of us will stay connected. And, if there's anybody out there attending who wants to get involved, I guarantee you any one of these 4 companies is seriously dedicated to rethinking these norms and really doing so in a way that can be executed. And I think that's what's really why we're here talking, is so we can kind of parlay that conversation forward so that people aren't just saying, let's rethink the norms, but also executing on those ideas.
Great. Okay, so let's open it up to the panel, to the questions from the chat. Has someone from Wake organized that, or do you want me to just read them out, or what?
I think we've got time for a couple. So Alana or Donovan, if you want to surface 2 great ones, let's do that.
Sure. Thank you for that, Provost Kirsten. Thank you, panelists, and for being here tonight and being so amazing and forthright with your projects and ideas. The first question, however, is for Mirel. It comes from the audience. Have you found it easier now that you have a proof of concept to align with other medical institutions and partners?
Yes, is the kind of quick answer. I think what was interesting for us is that we had clients and had been developing work, and the work that we develop is, can take 6 months to a year when we're doing these intensive research-based projects with our scientist collaborators too. So what happened in the pandemic is that people just started to see a proof of concept, even though we had so much else going on behind the scenes. So the way that I kind of refer to it, it felt like getting a demo of a single off an album that you're making behind the scenes out there in the world, and you're like, well, I don't want that one going like as public as it probably went when it shows up on the Today Show. But that was, the experience of what it means to sometimes have things where proof of concepts can go, that's what the moment requires, and that's what's needed too. So it did, I think that opened up more awareness of some things that we were developing, and definitely some more partnerships that came out of that as well too. But at the same time, one of the things that we have to do is really be focused, as you know, Glenn was talking about, what's your long-term vision? So that as we're looking at different things that we're doing, is this all feeding into what our mission and long-term plan is?
Great, thank you. And I'm going to queue up the next one. This is for movers and shakers from the audience. The existing textbooks and monuments were mostly erected by Daughters of the Confederacy. Have you examined how to leverage this approach that these women took to influence our history in order to support your mission?
So my understanding is that the Daughters of the Confederacy were erecting these monuments at the height of the Jim Crow era in the 50s and the 60s. And so they were working with power and leveraging that power to institutionalize this white supremacist system. We're taking a blended approach in the sense that with augmented reality, we're trying to circumvent bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy of rewriting a textbook, where you can just insert these narratives really cheaply and have them be entertaining for kids. But at the same time, I would say that it would be a lie to say that we're not working with power, in the sense that we want to get into schools, we want to speak to school administrators, we want to speak to, you know, large decision makers. Same can apply for cultural institutions, same can apply for cities. So from that perspective, we definitely are leveraging power in a different way. And we're also harnessing the energy that has been generated from this global Black Lives Matter movement to say, you know, now is the moment, instead of Idris, myself, and our co-founder Micah just being in the conference rooms at New Ink writing all these ideas on a wall. Now the whole country's meeting that moment. So yeah, it's a blended approach, I would say.
A beautiful note on which to end this inaugural Beta Bonfire, part of our inaugural Ideas City Winston-Salem event. Glenn, you spoke to a moment, and this has been a remarkable moment. Mirel, Glenn and Idris, Crystal, Kevin and Amen, what a blessing you brought us all. This could be another Zoom on an ordinary autumn Wednesday evening in a mid-sized city, but I think we all know it is much, much more. I feel like the seeds of a movement for a livelier, a more daring, a more meaningfully inclusive, a healthier, a more eco-aware city have been planted here by your remarkable projects and presentations. I think this has become an instant classic of an evening, and we so look forward, both as a city and movement, to the next round of Beta Bonfires. Those of you who are on as participants, that is audience, we've got another one coming your way in a month. Watch the Ideas City Winston-Salem space for announcements of that. But for now, let us all take a deep breath, exhale together, and give great thanks to our fabulous presenters. You four have been remarkable. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Have a great evening.